for this event, just look for the word tutorial or like the word reference, and you'll see there's links to this. And this is basically the cheat sheet that'll give you like all the links to all the stuff he's talking about.
Yeah, this is the cheat sheet that I am going to use for giving this, and because I have one laptop to do this with now instead of two, I will switch around between tabs a lot, but this is essentially what I'm using to structure my talk. Yes, I am Roan. Hi.
Do your intro.
Hi, I'm Roan Kattouw, and I am the guy that maintained this API for 2 years, between 07 and 09. And as such, I wrote a bunch of the code, and I know a lot about it. And if you have, if after this you have any questions, we are going to give you links to resources, places where you can ask questions. And there's a mailing list on IRC channel. But there is also, me, and I'm around all weekend, and you can ask me questions whenever you like. All right, so let's get started. The API that I'm going to be talking about is the web API, what we call a RESTful web API. If you don't know what REST means, go look it up on Wikipedia. The link is right there. But that's just a bunch of terminology that you don't really need to know. There is also other uses of the word API. It's an unfortunately overloaded word. Oh, wow. That sounds like an alarm clock.
It's like that's the overloaded alarm.
Overloaded for purposes of calling. So yeah, the term API is a little bit overloaded.
Let me just interrupt you. Rowan talks really fast. Do not feel bad about asking him to slow down and repeat stuff repeatedly.
Yes, you may interrupt me whenever you like. Interrupt me whenever you like. So the word API is a little bit overloaded, unfortunately. It's sometimes also used to refer to internal APIs that we have within the PHP application that is MediaWiki, or APIs for extension writers, or other sorts of APIs. But when I say API, I mean this. I mean the web API. So with that done, things that you would use the API for are things like bots that need to make automated edits, but also just generally programmatically looking stuff up and querying the wiki, and writing features in Ajax in JavaScript that also extensively use the API.
Is that clear? Does anyone have any questions?
The kind of data that you can get from the API is the kind of stuff that we have in our database. Pretty much everything that is in our database that is not private information is exposed in some shape or form. This is stuff like...
pull somebody's user page, or you could... I guess something's really hidden in the user page.
Yeah, you could pull...
Repeat the question, please.
Jeremy was asking if you can pull information about someone's user page. Yes, you totally can, as long as it's public. So, metadata that I mean is stuff like history metadata, links between pages, images that are used on pages, and we'll see a couple of examples of that as we go along. We don't really have semantic stuff like, I'm looking up a Wiktionary page. What is the definition part of the page? What is the definition of this word? That, MediaWiki doesn't understand pages that way. It doesn't understand the structure of a page because it's freely structured. You can structure it in whatever way you like. So if people are like, what is the population of this city that I have the article? MediaWiki doesn't know. So that's the kind of stuff that you cannot. This unfortunately includes geodata that you were asking about before the talk. I believe there is some external service that does it, but we're trying to work that in. The way you use it is you send HTTP requests somewhere. That can be get or post, and you get data back in XML or JSON format. Yes? Or you look like you were going to ask a question.
Oh, no, I was just staring at you as you talked.
Oh, you just, your arm made it sort of a gesture.
Oh,
And
it's
it's okay. So, yeah, we're a bit out of order here, but that's fine. So,
Questions?
I have a question, actually.
yes.
What formats are the response in?
What formats are the response in was the question. So, actually, the answer is you have a choice. There is about a half dozen formats that you can ask for. The ones that you will want to use in practice are XML and JSON.
Is there JSON-P?
Yes, there is JSON-P. There's also JSON-FM. There is JSON-P. It's not obvious how to use it, and I'm not going to cover it here. But if you want to learn how to use it, come talk to me. This should probably be documented better. Yes.
HTML or wiki markup in the
content?
Both. The question was, do we provide content in wiki markup or HTML for the content page? The answer is we provide both, and I'm going to show you how to do both.
Plain text.
As far as content of pages goes, there is no such thing as plain text, just wiki text.
Can I plug the Wikipedia stuff easily into YQL?
Can I plug the Wikipedia stuff easily into YQL? What's YQL?
Yeah.
Oh, it's the Yahoo query language?
It's like a scraper tool.
Yahoo query?
Yahoo Query
I've
Language?
heard about
It's
that.
like a scraper tool. It's pretty handy. Like
It's
if you
kind
do
of
like
like a SQL.
scraping and stuff.
I have never worked with YQL before, and I'm sure that all of our other API developers have no idea what YQL is. Therefore, it has not been implemented, but I don't know.
Oh, it's their job to do it.
Oh, it's their job to do it.
Yeah.
Then maybe they did it, and maybe they didn't.
Yeah, it's not
Is
Um,
it okay for us to just say unknown and then we'll move on?
Unknown, and
Yeah.
For you later?
ask Yahoo. We will move on. So the device that I'm going to be using for the purposes of this demonstration is something called the API Sandbox. You can visit it using, you can visit it using a link over here with the lock icon that says API Sandbox. And it will help me.
Quick question. I want to interrupt. Can everyone get to that? Has everyone already loaded this? Did you type it in? Okay, capitalize the T. I'm sorry.
It's not like you could write it down better. We could underscore the capital letters or something.
No
But
problem. Don't worry about it. Is there anyone else who's having trouble getting to the basic tutorial cheat sheet? No? Okay. So
Okay.
then you can click from there to the sandbox.
So yeah, this is the sandbox where you can kind of build queries with some sort of a form. It's not really optimized for educational usage just yet, so there are a few issues with this that we're just going to have to live with for now. But that'll be, we'll just have to live with that. The basic way that things are going to work is that there is a, scrolling thing. The basic way that things are going to work is that there's a URL for hitting the API, which is this one. And basically whatever, like your query, the information about what you want to know is going to be in the query string, because that's the way that REST APIs work. There are also API.phps for other wikis, not just Wikipedia. So for any MediaWiki installation anywhere on the web, including the 800 or so wikis that we have, you can find an API.php, and it will give you information about the contents of that wiki. But we are going to demonstrate this using the English Wikipedia API because that's what most people use.
Are there any? Is that fairly clear? I think that's a little complicated, but did people catch it?
Can you repeat that?
Can I repeat what?
So mind if I'll just stand by the front just so everyone can see. The Wikimedia Foundation, the organization we belong to, runs a bunch of different wikis, all of which are running MediaWiki, this software. One of them is Wikipedia, and that's the one we're using as an example. We write code, and then we deploy it to our site, and then we will release it as a tarball to someone else. So like right now, the most recent version of MediaWiki is 1.18. We are working on 1.19. We will then deploy it to our site, find problems, and then release it to the world as a nice little tarball 1.19. But there will be a moment, right, where even really up-to-date wikis out there are running some different version of the site, and so of the software, and therefore there will be different versions of the API. So you need to watch out that whatever wiki you're trying to hit, whatever wiki you're trying to use the API for, you're using the correct version of it. And so each of them has their own auto-generated documentation at api.php that you can use as your source, as your reference. Is that somewhat clear? Or maybe there's a more specific question that...
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay.
I should warn you that things are not as scary as Sumina is projecting them to be. Different versions of MediaWiki will have different versions of the API, but there are typically no breaking differences between them. So if you wrote your code for version 18 and things are suddenly upgraded to version 19, things will typically continue to work. We'll just be adding features, but we will typically not break existing usage unless we really need to. And if we do that, there will be an announcement, and I will tell you later where you can get these announcements.
Is that fairly clear? Are there any questions? Okay.
All right, so this is parameters passed in it all. What you will get is an enormous documentation page that is, it's a self-documenting API, so it generates its own documentation. It's kind of terse in that it documents 3 billion things, and all of them are documented in like 1 or 2 sentences. But it does give you an authoritative, let me actually scroll to a useful place. Like this is a useful place. It does give you an authoritative overview of what kind of parameters and usages are accepted. Because this is really just generated from the same information that the API uses to determine whether your query made sense. For the remainder of this tutorial, I'm going to be using the sandbox to build queries and then execute them. So we will not be seeing that documentation directly a lot, but it's useful to know that it's out there so you can like view all the details of the modules that you're using.
Let me briefly point out that our API sandbox is kind of in beta, and we're working on improving it. And so, for example, there's a thing in there where you can get an example query. Like there's a bunch of different little examples of things you can do. A little still difficult to actually use, but it's there.
Okay, so for the format, you would usually want JSON for practical purposes. For the purposes of the demonstration, I'm going to use XML because I find it slightly more readable, at least in our case. The action parameter should typically just be query because you're reading information. There are a couple dozen other values for this action parameter, which is usually obscure edge case stuff. So don't ask, just use query, and the advanced stuff will occasionally use other things. In this demo, I am going to look up what images are used on the San Francisco article.
No.
Why not?
Isn't San Francisco one of the hard ones?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to look up something else. I'm going to look up which images are used on the article called MS River Dance. So I'm going to go to Properties, and then I'm going to go to prop equals images. And I will get, this is a very rich API, so I will get like a dozen different parameters for the images module. Most of these things are obscure things that you will never use. So you will find me skipping a lot of these parameters. And it's usually fine to leave them blank unless you have a specific case where you need to use them.
There's an examples button.
Yep, which will show me examples over here. And then if I click the link, it will fill out the query for me, which is kind of weird. But in this case, I am going to just fill it out myself. I will want to get 20 images. And the title I want it for is MS River Dance. Make request. And then over here, it gives me the URL to the request that it built, which is really just API.php, question mark, and a bunch of stuff in your query string, which is really just your request. This is everything I filled out, really. And then the XML I'm going to get back is something like, for the page MS River Dance, we have these images. And apparently there are only, I asked for 20, but apparently there's no more than 7 images on the page. So this is a very basic example of how you get images. Any questions so far? None? Excellent. Okay, I'm going to go to the next example then, which is, let's see, what did I do after this? Okay, so let's just, I'm going to go against Sumina's wishes and still look up the images on the San Francisco page.
Okay.
Because I need a page that has more than 20 images, and San Francisco is one of them.
I think I was thinking of one of the other examples that proved like a
Yes.
problem last time.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's right. Right. So for San Francisco, there's a bunch of images like cable car, California county map, and it will list 20 of them. And then it will say, I have more, and here's information on how to continue the query. Yes.
It broke for me.
It broke for you. How did it break for you?
Okay, just 1 second, and we'll go through this.
Okay.
All right, so let's compare all the
Yes.
all the parameters. So format equals.
XML.
I'm using JSON.
It shouldn't matter. What action? Query. What prop equal? Images. Limit equal 20. And then you misspelled San Francisco.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It tends to be one of those things. So it's giving me 20 images in this case because I asked for at most 20. But there is a query continue element here that in a kind of obscure way tells me how to get more. In this case, I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to ask for more. I'm just going to raise the 20 here to more. However, there is a limit on how high your requested limit can be. For normal users, it's 500, unless you have an account with special privileges, in which case it's 5,000. If you don't want to bother about finding out what your specific limit is, you can just specify the magic value max, and it will request however many you're allowed to
Quick
request.
question: is magic value a term of art? Is that jargon, or are you just saying magic?
I just say magic.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a number, but max is like this magic exception to the rule where you can put in max, and it will magically figure out what your maximum allowed limit is and use it.
Is that documented?
Yes.
Great.
This is the limit for the images, right?
Yes.
What
This
about the API number of API calls? How many can you make? You throttle it down. How do you handle that stuff?
So the question is, how many API calls can you make, and how do we handle this? There is no hard and fast limits on how many read queries you can make per second or anything. It's just that we ask that you not go crazy, and if you do go crazy and take down the site, we reserve the right to block you.
Okay.
This actually, I have a good story about this later. This actually happened to UC Berkeley and caused all Berkeley students to not have access to Wikipedia
Oh, really?
For how long?
for a couple of hours.
Just brief. Sorry. Was there a question over here that needs answering? No, everything's cool. Okay.
Okay. So yes, there is no limits on requeries as such. There are some limits in the software generally, not just concerning the API, but generally, as to how many edits you can make per second, like that kind of stuff. Also, if you do start going on an editing rampage without announcing it to the community, they will probably block you. But that's a human factor. But I'll get to that in a little bit. So I'm going to request the maximum number of images that I am allowed to request. And since I'm logged in, that will probably be a lot, because I am, of course, a privileged user. So let's see. Here's a bunch of images, and it says you asked for the maximum. Your maximum is 5,000. This is because I am an administrator on this wiki. As a mortal, you will probably get 500. But since there only was about 30, I've actually got all of them now. But if I go to something that there's more than 5,000 of, last time we used list of all pages, and it turns out that like the third page in the list contains the F word, and there's like 10 of those pages. So we're going to be family friendly now that it's recorded, and I'm going to do all images and pray that there's no F word in there. So I'm going to request all images. I'm not going to do anything special here. I'm just going to request the maximum, and it's probably not going to be enough.
And it's going to take a while?
It's going to take a while because there's going to be 5,000 images. All right, so there's a lot of, just like alphabetically listing or attempting to list all images that exist in the wiki. And then all the way down, it will have exhausted the 5,000 limit.
Do you have a point?
No.
Oh.
Okay. And then it will say, like, there are more results. And the query continue tag tells you how to get those results. It says, in order to get more results for all images, you have to set the AI from parameter to ljros.jpg. So I'm going to copy this value into AI from, which is up here. And if I do that and I run it, and again, it takes a while. I will get the next 5,000. It will start with 1J Ross, obviously, and go down to 361, and then it will once again give me a query continue. I could go on like this probably for a while because we have a lot of images on this wiki, probably a couple million. But eventually you will have reached the end of the list, and it will stop giving you a query continue tag, and that's how you know that you're done. I do not recommend that you try to list all of the millions of pages or images on the English Wikipedia that way, but you might legitimately need to get like all historic versions of a page, and there might be like 3,000 of them, in which case you're going to need to use this facility.
Can we run these like can you get the API over a dump, like a dump of Wikipedia, like a dump it and just install it somewhere and just use it?
So the question was, can I use the API on a Wikipedia dump? The answer is that if you take a dump of Wikipedia, like SQL or XML, you import it into a MediaWiki installation locally, then yes, you can use the API because the API is part of the MediaWiki core. And it will work on your local laptop exactly the way that it will work on Wikipedia.
Do you have any estimation like how big the size would be of all the, like probably we don't need to fetch all the media, but the historical revisions?
An estimate as to the size of the historical, if you download a dump of the English Wikipedia with all historic versions, I think the compressed size of that is about a dozen terabytes, and it expands to something in the neighborhood of 160 terabytes, I think. You should talk to our dumps guy if you're interested in working with like dumps for like a lot of data. You shouldn't typically use that unless you have like a need for a lot of data. If you're talking about only a couple thousand things, use the API because it will be much more efficient. Yes?
If you could just maybe repeat this for the audio, dumps.wikimedia.org.
Dumps.wikimedia.org is where you get your dumps, yes.
I'll link to it.
In the 2000s, there used to be a mobile application that did that, but it just like downloaded on your phone.
Oh, like a Wikipedia offline
It's
application?
Symbian, yeah.
We have that.
There is one.
It's selected though, because your phone can't hold all that.
Someone wrote a web app for like Chrome that does this. That has like a dump in it, or maybe it downloads articles one by one. I don't know. But there are like projects where people put dumps on phones in third world countries, so they have like an offline Wikipedia. There are projects that do this.
Yeah.
Similar. Kiwix, yes.
I will link to both of these on the API page in the section you may actually want.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Kiwix is a viewer that they use for offline Wikipedia purposes. Any other questions so far? No? Okay, well, we'll move on. Okay, so I've demonstrated how you can continue a query. I've demonstrated how you get images from a page. Now, okay, I'm going to say a brief word about state-changing actions like editing, but I'm not going to actually demonstrate it because it's not really newbie suitable material. And then I'm going to go on to the magic recipe section.
You can refresh this right now.
Okay. So if you want to make an edit through the API or remove a page or do whatever, that is possible, but you will need to send a post request because if we would allow that via GET requests, we would be violating the HTTP specification, and we don't want to do that. It is a two-step process involving a token. During the previous session, someone asked, like, do you guys have API tokens like the Google Maps API? They require you to get a token, and then they, limit your usage. We do not have that for reading. However, tokens do exist. For security reasons, tokens exist when you try to make edits. So there is a two-step process where in the first step you will have to obtain a token, and then in the second step you will have to provide that token when you make an edit. The details of how you do edits or how you do moves, etc., are kind of involved in some cases, and I'm not going to explain them here because we don't have time and it could be here all day. But read the documentation or talk to me. And there's a brief teaser example up here, but I'm not really going to spend any more time on that. If you have any questions about it, ask at the end or come talk to me or read the documentation or whatever. So there are a couple of query types that are very useful and very common, but are totally not obvious how to do. So I'm going to show you now, and then for the rest of your life you will know how to do them, hopefully. the first thing I'm going to do is getting basic information about a page. We have seen before that if you do, of course the back button doesn't actually work the way I want it to. If you do, like I did before, like images on the San Francisco page, then there will be a little tag here that says title equals San Francisco and page ID equals 49728. That is a tiny bit of metadata, but we have more metadata about pages. So,
what is page ID?
Page ID is a numerical value that's used internally to refer to a page. It's not generally useful for outside consumption. I'm not entirely sure why it's there, but just in case you have like a title, you need to look up its page ID or vice versa, it is possible. And it tends to be the case that pages can be renamed, but when that happens, their page ID will remain the same.
Instead of getting a list of file names, could I get a set of URLs for the files?
You can.
Repeat the question.
Instead of getting a list of file names, can I get URLs for the files? You can, but that's kind of an advanced query that I will hopefully do later. And if not, I will show you one-on-one. Okay, so let's get more metadata for San Francisco. I'm going to go to prop equals info. And I am going to check, for instance, URL. And probably none of the other stuff. And I'm going to skip all this, San Francisco, go. And it's going to give me a fairly wide, oh, there's no scroll bar here, come on. Like we said, there are a few issues with the sandbox. So this is what it's going to look like. There's like, instead of 3 attributes, there's now 3 lines of attributes where it has like the last touch timestamp, the ID of the last revision, the length in bytes of the page, the URL to the page, the URL to edit the page, and there's more metadata available that you can choose to get. But we learned from the last tutorial that I really shouldn't check those boxes because then we have a 15-minute discussion about what that particular piece of metadata means, which is not productive. Multiple pages, get metadata from multiple pages by separating them with pipes. So for instance, I set San Francisco pipe candy char pipe cooperative principal, and I now get separate tags for each of them. And you can specify up to 50 titles with pipes this way. And this also works for a few other cases, for a few other use cases as well. The second magic recipe is, and I'm going to go back to candy char now. The second magical recipe is how do you get the history of a page? Strangely, history for weird historical reasons is under revisions. And again, there's like this module has 3 modes and there's a bunch of parameters, but I'm just going to ignore that stuff for now. Limit is set to 10, so I'm going to get 10 historical versions starting at the latest one. And I'm going to skip. I'm going to get the history for candy char. And this will show me the IDs of the, okay, I'm going to put this in its own window again. This will show me the IDs of those revisions, the IDs of their parents. But what's more interesting is it will show you which user made the change, when they made the change, and what their comment was when they made the change, and also whether it was minor or not.
So, just a break
Question?
here. Any particular questions? Anything anyone had any trouble following along with? Okay.
All right. So, and again, if you go to the bottom, there will be a query continue because they asked for 10 revisions, and candy char probably has a rich history that goes back
Thousands of years.
Yes. In the case of the Wikipedia page, probably not, because after 10 revisions, I'm already in 2009, which is unfortunate. If you go to the San Francisco page, this does not happen, and 10 revisions ago is like 3 days ago. But you can step through the history of this page this way. You can tweak the RV limit parameter, which up here somewhere. You can tweak this one. You can set it to max if you want, and that will allow you to get like history en masse. If everyone has no questions, then I'm going to go to the third magic recipe.
So
Yes.
if you separate those with pipes, does it still count as one API call in terms of?
Yes. Yes. That's why you should totally be combining stuff. If you want to, like, if you're concerned about, like, I'm going to be making a lot of requests, you should learn about the ways that you can combine requests, because there is more ways that you can do it, which I might touch upon later in this tutorial. If not, I can tell you how in person. And that allows you to combine things into one request, and that'll be easier for us to deal with as well. Yes? Someone here had a question?
Yeah, it looks like pipes doesn't work for revisions. Is that right?
That's right. If you want multiple revisions, also from multiple pages, it's just going to give you an error, because that's not allowed. There is an elaborate documentation stuff up here, maybe used in several ways. If you actually read the whole thing, which is quite dense and a bit of a read, then it will tell you that certain combinations of things are not allowed, and you hit one of the combinations where we're like, nope, that would be too hard on the database if we allowed you to do that. Anyone else?
So this was within the doing crazy stuff, multiple titles section. So I'm just making a note here about that you should read
Yes.
the documentation via the sandbox
In
or
the-
via AutoDocs.
Mm-hmm. In the specific case of revisions, there are certain combinations that are not allowed. For other cases, it's usually allowed. All right, so the third thing that I'm going to do out of the four is getting the content, getting the wiki text content of a page is also not quite obvious. For historical reasons, the content is tucked away in the revisions API, even if you just want the content of a given page. So what I'm going to do now is I've already got this call that gets the last 10 versions of Kattouw, and I'm going to now specify the prop parameter. I'm going to ask for, let's see, I want IDs, flags, timestamp user. Let's also ask for Let's also ask for size and for comment. And importantly, I'm going to check content. And that's the important one in this case. Now, if I request this one, it will, let's see, I will, again, paste this in a browser window so it's easier to read. In this case, it will give me a rev tag with a bunch of metadata that I asked for, including the timestamp, which I specifically asked for in this case, the size in bytes of the revision and the comment, but it will also give me the content of the page as of that revision. And then below here, it will tell me about the previous version of the page, which was, oh, that's why you knew about the page. You added it yourself, Sumana. The second to last revision is yours. So this is the version as Sumana saved it on the 1st of November. And then this is the version as this person saved it in December of last year, et cetera, et cetera. So this way you can get historical content of pages as well as current content. And for some reason, you need to use the historical content facility to get the current content, which is not obvious and which is why I'm telling you about it. You can also get the content of multiple pages this way, as long as you're only interested in the last version. So I'm going to specify multiple titles here, like, let's see, Colar Gold Fields and Cooperative Principle. Colar Gold Fields. Did I do that right? No, it's capital F. And Cooperative Principle. And I'm going to blank out the number 10 here, because if I ask for multiple revisions of multiple pages, like one of the guys here tried to do, I will get an error message. I am also not interested in any of this metadata. I am only interested in the content. All right, so I'm going to make that request. And now, it will give me the wiki text of the page cooperative principle, and then the wiki text of the page Kattouw, and then a wiki text of Kohler Goldfields.
You said that we can get HTML.
I said that you can get HTML, and that was the next thing on my list. So we're going to get there in about 1 minute. Does anyone else have any questions so far? None? Okay, then we'll get you your HTML. So
Perfect.
wiki text with templates and info boxes and wiki text link syntax and wiki text list syntax and all that sort of scary stuff. Instead, we are going to get HTML. The way you get HTML is a little bit different from the way you get everything else. I'm going to have to actually go to the action parameter and change it from query to parse. And I'm going to get a different set of parameters here. And in the field page, not title, but page in this case, weird historical reasons, do not ask why. Sumina tried and she didn't like the answer. I'm going to fill out, let's do Kattouw again. And then I'm going to make requests. And I will get so here we go. This is the full output from the parse module, and it contains a lot of data. There is the rendered HTML text of the page here. This is only the page content, so it doesn't include like the navigation bars around the article and that sort of stuff. This is only the HTML of the article, which is just in here. And then there's also all sorts of metadata that the parser found out about when it was parsing the article. So translations of Kattouw into other languages, categories that the article is in, links that exist on the article, which there's a bunch of, templates using the article, images using the article, external links using the article. Now all this stuff, so lang links, categories, links, templates, and images, all of these you can get through normal facilities with the prop equals type queries. I showed an example for images, but you can do much the same for language links or categories, etc. However, the parse module has added value in 3 cases. One of them is it gives you the HTML text of the page. Number 2 is if you want to submit like arbitrary text and find out what links are in it, like arbitrary wiki text, you can do this through this module. And number 3 is it will give you the section structure, like the stuff that appears in the table of contents of this page.
We have about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Quick question.
Question, yes.
Content, so the parse module, it also gives you images and all the other stuff?
Yes, the parse module also gives you images and all the other stuff. Actually, the reason that it does this is because Google asked me to. They wanted a convenient way to get it all in one request, and I'm like, sure, I'll just plug it in here.
Another one, so just general question, content that you display on your mobile phones, like on your mobile apps and stuff, is it the same as exactly this, all of the content that you display on the website?
I don't understand your question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question is like, so whatever, whatever place I type in Wikipedia on the mobile phone is going to display the exact same content, or structure, like it's a shortened version?
So the question is, the Wikipedia pages that I see on my mobile phone, are they shortened versions or different in any way from what I would see on the desktop? The answer is, I don't quite know. Ask our mobile people. The content itself is not going to be different. The way it's presented might be different. Some things might be hidden initially. So the wiki text base is going to be the same. The HTML that gets rendered to your mobile might be different from what comes out here. But I don't know the full story. So yeah, I don't know the full story here because I don't work in the mobile department. So you will have to ask those people.
What are the sections?
What are the sections? So if I go to, actually this is a bad example. I'm going to use a slightly different page here. I'm going to go back to using San Francisco because it works so well for everything. So this is the sections tag for San Francisco, and it goes history, geography, climate, cityscape, etc. Now, if I go to San Francisco, then there will be a table of contents here, and there will be, like headers over here, cityscape, neighborhoods, culture and contemporary life, etc. That kind of structure the article. And this whole structure is also available over here. So it will tell you that beaches and parks is section 3.2. Because there's like 3 different ways to numerically refer to a section, they're all in here. It's like a confusion through completeness thing.
Yeah. Looking at the page, the top level that's above the sections, is that broken out at all?
Is what broken out at all?
The top level, like the summary section?
Oh,
Looking at
this.
the page.
Oh, you mean this?
Yes.
So basically, this is what we call section 0. This is any content that appears before the start of the first section, but it's not broken out, because if it were broken out, then it would not be part of the first bit. So this is just like the introduction, which is above the first header.
call for it, you would say, I want section 0 of the
Yes.
page.
Right.
Is that
Actually,
documented somewhere?
Because you asked, I will demonstrate it right now. I'm going to go back to the query where we asked for the content of a page. So if you ask for, it's query prop equals revisions, content,
In
no
HTML,
limit.
please.
Okay, in HTML, whatever.
Please.
As you wish, as you wish. So parse,
Right.
we said page equals San Francisco. Now there is a section parameter floating. Here's a section parameter.
And I just
You
put
can
a 0 in there.
Yes, number 0 is what appears before the first thing. The other sections have numbers here. Index is what you should use.
What is the
So-
table of contents? Which section is that?
The table of contents itself
Yeah.
is not part of the wiki text. It's magically rendered, so it's not anywhere.
So that's it.
It
Section
exists
0.
in limbo.
Does it come in the content, or does?
No, that
no.
sections is it really?
Yes. The table of contents is not actually put in by a human, so it's not in the wiki text. So it exists in limbo somewhere, and it will be in your HTML output, but it will not be in your wiki text output because it's generated from.
So you could generate it from that.
You could generate, or you can just, look at this.
API would be helpful. Okay, makes sense. What about, quick question?
Mhm.
What about all these, these hyperlink text, like hyperlinks?
What about
So
the
that
links?
User can just click on, does that, the HTML shows the hyperlinks?
Yes, the HTML is exactly the same as what you're
Same
looking
thing.
at.
Okay,
Yes.
Can you run that query?
Can I run that query? Yes.
You had it in the
So
sandbox.
yes, I'm going to run it. So say I want to get like the section neighborhoods. I'm going to get section 0 in a minute. I'm going to do neighborhoods first.
Sure.
Neighborhoods at index 5. So I'm going to go and ask for section 5. And let's see, I should put this in.
Just tack on section.
Oh yeah, I can really just tack on section equals 5. That's right, this query is the same. Section equals 5. And then this starts with,
Neighborhoods.
I see neighborhoods in here somewhere. And it will actually, if you look at the data here, this will only apply to the neighborhood section probably. So that's why the section tree is just one item, because neighborhoods doesn't have subsections. If I asked for section 4, actually, it would, I'm going to go to section 0 in a minute. I'm really sorry.
Cityscape.
Then, yes, it's actually saying, well, there are subsections. Neighborhoods
section
and beaches and
4.
parks.
Right.
These are 5 and 6. Well, okay, the indices here, this is probably a little bit of a bug. The indices here you actually have to do some corrections on. Bug in the implementation. Section 0 is going to give me the introduction. So,
Is every page going to have a section 0?
yes.
Not always.
Yes, there's always going to be section 0. It just might be empty.
Okay.
But there is always going to be a section
If it's
0.
empty, I can just fetch the whole page.
It will very rarely, for an encyclopedic article, it will very rarely be empty. It's theoretically possible for it to be empty, and it's theoretically possible for there to not be a section 1. But, if you grab the section tree, you will know.
I want to interrupt this particular sub that we could take to, a collaboration
We
session?
can, we
Because
can.
It sounds like you have specific needs that you want to work on.
Yes.
So let's talk about the resources that are available,
Mm-hmm.
because we got maybe 5 minutes left.
Okay, I was intending to demonstrate a little bit how you can use jQuery and Ajax to query the API. I guess that was a bit ambitious, so we're not going to do that.
And
I'm also
very
not
briefly,
gonna-
Let's ask about questions. Any other questions? Okay, great.
I'm also not going to be showing the crazy stuff part, but if anyone's interested in I kind of did multiple titles, but you can also combine multiple modules in one query, and you can do generators, which I think someone asked, I want the URLs for these images, not image names. I think that was you. Yes, you're going to need a generator, which is a complex construct that requires some explanation, but we can do that one-on-one. So resources.
Can we just hit reload on that page?
So resources. If you want to get help, there is the auto-generated documentation that I showed you, which you get if you pass no parameters to API to PHP. There's documentation in MediaWiki.org where the details are sometimes outdated, and if it claims something and the auto-generated documentation claims something else, believe the latter because it's automatically generated and guaranteed to be up to date. Hey, Trevor. There is the API sandbox, which I showed you exhaustively. There is a mailing list, MediaWiki API list at wikimedia.org, where you can go and send emails to ask questions, and hopefully helpful people will answer you. There is an announcements mailing list where if we make a change that might break existing tools because the behavior changed, we will announce things there. If something super important happens and everyone that uses the API should be aware of it, we will announce it there. So if you use the API, subscribe. We promise it's low traffic, 4 or 5 emails a year. So it'll be fine. There is the #MediaWiki channel on irc.freedom.net, which is the general support channel that we use for MediaWiki. But if you have an API question, we will likely also be able to help you there. If I am there, I will try to help you. If I'm not there, then hopefully someone else will. And you can use me as a human resource. I will be available all weekend for all your API questions. Feel free to grab me. And I think Sumna put in some links. Dumps.wikimedia.org for the dumps of all Wikipedias in various formats that you might want to use. This is not strictly related to the API, but it's available. And Kiwix is an offline Wikipedia reader that is used on those smartphones in developing countries where they have crappy internet connections.
Kiwix? Oh, it's on
Kiwix, it's on there.
Yeah, just hit reload. Everybody just hit reload on this, and I've been adding stuff all session.
All right, so I've gotten to the bottom of my page. Does anyone have any questions at this point still?
So in terms of API, query is less resource consuming than parse, right?
Sometimes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the question was, is action equals query less resource intensive than action equals parse? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If you are asking it for the contents of a page and you're not doing anything crazy like asking for sections or providing your own wiki text for it to parse, it will pull from the parser cache and it will be fast. If you are doing any of the crazy things I described, then yes, it will be resource intensive. But generally, the guide to not exhausting our resources is don't make parallel requests. Wait for one request to finish before you make the next one. And that way, you will not melt our servers, and it will be in your own interest to make things faster or compress into less requests because you're punishing yourself for inefficiencies that way. And you will make sure that you're not causing problems for us. At any rate, make sure that you're not doing what Berkeley did, which was hitting one of those resource-intensive things that you talked about at 110 requests per second, each from 22 machines. And those 22 machines had different public IPs, and they were blowing up our backend, so the only thing we could really do was block the entire IP subnet for UC Berkeley. And their students didn't like that very much because they couldn't read Wikipedia anymore.
Was it automatic or it was human inflicted?
Oh no, this was a human that made a bad decision and decided to run the research project this way.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're done.